Today we're going to look at the career of Norman Saunders, an illustrator whose career spanned half a century, during which he worked illustrating pulp fiction magazines in the 30s and 40s. He did covers for paperback books later on. He worked for more mainstream slick magazines. He worked for the Topps Bubblegum Company and other similar companies later in his career. He did a lot of really fascinating work. Now, Norman Saunders was born in northern Minnesota in 1907. And while he was still young, he developed a lifelong habit of carrying around a sketchbook when he would draw whatever he observed. At the age of 13, he ran away from home for a while, and he earned his living on Mississippi riverboats by dancing in saloons and playing piano. Now, he did return home, and he did return to school. And while in high school, his work was featured in his school's magazine, and he had his first professional success selling cartoons to a publication called Captain Billy's Whiz Bang. He also took an art correspondence course from the Federal Schools of Minneapolis. Now, it was this correspondence course that led to his first regular professional job as an artist. In 1927, Saunders was traveling to Chicago after getting a scholarship to study at the Chicago Art Institute. On the way there, he stopped in Minneapolis to visit the Federal Schools building to meet his correspondence course teacher. This teacher suggested he visit the office of Fawcett Publications, a magazine publisher. Saunders did so, and an editor at Fawcett mistook him for a staff artist and handed him an assignment. Saunders just went ahead and completed that assignment, plus 4 more that came after that. Now, when payday arrived, the editor realized that Saunders wasn't on the payroll, so he immediately offered him a job. Saunders took the job. He gave up his college scholarship to do this, but that proved to be a wise career move for him. He was soon doing the covers of several different magazines, most notably Modern Mechanics, and would also often provide the interior illustrations for those magazines as well. Now, his success eventually brought him to New York City, where he worked as a freelance artist for various pulp magazines. Now, at the time, pulp magazines, so-called because they were printed on inexpensive pulp paper, were extremely popular sources of escapist fiction. Because the competition was so stiff in the pulp magazine industry, publishers depended on striking cover illustrations to catch the eyes of potential readers who might be browsing the newsstands. Saunders did excellent cover paintings for magazines in many different genres. Now, Saunders believed it was important for an artist to work in different genres. Quote, "The last thing you want to be is pigeonholed as an expert at one thing," unquote. An artist, Saunders believed, should be recognized by his style, not by the subject matter he painted. Now, during World War II, Saunders was drafted into the Army. At first, he worked as a writer and an illustrator for information articles about the military. Later on, he served in China, helping to construct a gasoline pipeline. After the war, Saunders began to do work for mainstream magazines such as The New Yorker, but he soon discovered that art directors for these magazines demanded all paintings conform to a specific style. Now, Saunders felt constrained by this, so he returned to working for the pulp magazines, and when the pulps were replaced by paperback books, he began doing paperback covers. He also did covers and interior art for what were known as men's adventure magazines, of which you see one example here. Now, in 1960, he took a job for the Topps Bubblegum Card Company. He was painting color onto black and white photos of baseball players to be used for baseball cards. In 1961, Topps celebrated the 100th anniversary of the American Civil War by producing their first non-sports set of cards, with Norman Saunders doing the artwork. Now, during the 1960s, Saunders did a lot of work for Topps. Here we see examples of a war-themed series, and below that, an example of a series he did based on the Batman comic book character. Now, his most well-known work from that time is probably the Mars Attacks cards issued in 1962. These are still well remembered today, and they've been reprinted multiple times since they first came out, and they were the basis of a movie made by Tim Burton years after they were first produced. Another fondly remembered effort were the Wacky Packages stickers that parodied product design and advertising. Saunders was always critical of Madison Avenue conformity, and he once said, quote, "I had a successful career as an artist, but the first time my kids thought an artist was important was when I put out a bubblegum card. I liked doing them because my kids were finally proud of their old man." Now, Norman Saunders died in 1989. But he lived long enough to see a resurgence of interest in pulp cover art and to learn that his work was fondly remembered and appreciated by many. And the library does have a book on Norman Saunders written by his son David that has a lot of detailed information about his life and career and many, many fine examples of the excellent work he did over the course of his career.